Anyway, welcome everybody. Today's webinar, the adrenals, well, we're going to be working with the whole of the blue energy circuit, the adrenals, the kidneys, the bladder, the urethra, the vagina and the penis. That's the organs of it, and they're the energy points that we will be going into as I talk about it. And we will be working with all of those, but we've come to the last webinar in the series, and we're mainly going to be working with the adrenals. And for me, there's a connection between the adrenals, the brain, and the mind. And it's a lot to do with the neural pathways through the brain and just the electrical charges going through that. And then how that disperses out through the body. Now, there are the electrical charges through the neurons and the nerve pathways, and this is to do, I don't know what it's to do with, but it's to do with our patterns, how we work, how we think, what we do, how we move, the whole thing really. And there's also an electrical current that spreads out through the astrocyte cells, which has a completely different feel to it. And the neural pathways are like telephone lines. They just go in straight lines around the axons or around the cables of this nerve. And the energies or electrical charges through the astrocyte cells are like mobile phones. They just spread in all directions, and those are the cells that they started investigating more after Einstein died, because they looked in Einstein's brain after he died to see why he was so intelligent, whether there were more neurons, synapses, or all these type of things. And no, not so, just the same. But what he had was lots more astrocyte cells, which are kind of these sea anemone type cells which connect to everything. And the intelligence and the electricity and the communication from these just spread in all directions, like cell phones. So they just go everywhere. Everything outside of us has already been invented inside of us. You know, for millions or however many years we've been around, we've had telephone cables in us, and we've had cell phones in us, broadcasting through our head. And the place of the adrenals seems to relate to the neurons and these cables going kind of I'm having a bit of trouble tonight. Anyway, these nerve pathways that travel through the brain, through the spine, and out through the nerves. And when you become aware of this, you start becoming aware of the intellect. And I can remember that being a very, terrifying thing to me. When my Kundalini first awakened, when it arose and never stopped arising, it just carried on through my brain, I became aware of that. I became aware of this all this activity in my brain and the quality of the intellect. And I thought I'd gone mad. Well, I didn't know. I thought, well, maybe this is a Kundalini awakening, or maybe I've just gone mad. It was a 50-50 toss-up, really, which had happened. It's still not 100% clear, really. But anyway, I became aware of my head in a way that I wasn't aware of it before. And before that, I was kind of in my heart and in my body. And it was like this new room opened up that I had no knowledge of before. It really is like you open up a door and you walk into this new room that just wasn't available, and it has the intellect in it. And I was scared. I thought, oh, I've gone mad. And this thing kept on coming into my mind. In my younger days, quite druggy and hippie. And a lot of my friends lost the pot and came to very dubious ends. And one of them was called Pud. And he just took LSD every day and speed all the time. And he just slowly wandered into this different world and became quite aggressive and was very difficult to be around because he'd kind of gone. And my friend said to me, said, Pud is stuck in his id. Now, I had no idea. You know, hippies are always talking about the id and the ego and all these different things. I don't think anybody knows what they mean still. But anyway, it's not a good thing to get stuck in your id. And I knew it had something to do with the mind. And I thought, oh no, I'm stuck in my id and I can't get out of my id. I'm going to go the same route as Pud. I've had it. But anyway, I've just got used to that, just used to the energies going through my brain and this quality of the internet and internet. So maybe it relates to the internet as well. Intellect. And the adrenals connect to that. And this energy started circulating. It was rising up my spine. And it would go and it would work through different areas of my brain. And it would start at the back. It was nice in the cerebellum because that's not really the intellect. It hasn't got this feeling of the intellect. But then as soon as it gets up into the cerebrum, there's this quality of the intellect. And it kind of gets stronger the more forwards you get. And it was always nice when it came to the frontal lobes here, and from there it comes together in, I forgot what they're called, but all of the nerve pathways that are leaving the whole cerebrum and coming down into the central brain complex all gather together from the front and slightly back from the front, and they all come down into the central brain complex, then down through the spine and out through the nerves. And I always quite enjoyed it here, even though it was very much to do with the intellect. I knew that it was going to come down into the pons and that whole area, and it would be more kind of physical, and I would drop out of this strong quality of being stuck in the id and going to go mad. I'll have to find out what that word means, but it would terrify me at the time. I thought, yeah, I'm definitely stuck in my id, whatever that means. And but anyway, that area there, that quality, what I was clear that was relating to was the adrenals. And these blue energies was this from this area of the brain coming down into the central stem and out through the whole body. And interestingly, that's a bit like the picture of a neuron. You've got like the cell body of the neuron, which would be the brain. And then it all comes together into a cord, which is the axon, which is where the electrical charge is coming along, and then around that you've got myelinating glial cells, and then it splits off in different directions before it connects to other neurons. So that somehow relates to the blue energies in the adrenals. And it's not the neurons per se. I'm going to show you, well, let's show you a picture of that now. I'm going to show you more pictures in a bit, but let's just so that you've got a picture of that, show you a picture of a neuron, because the adrenals relate to the nerve pathways, and the nerve pathways are made up of neurons. So here's a picture of that. So you've got a neuron here, and this whole thing is a neuron. This is the cell body, and it's like the brain. And then the electrical charge from this comes down what's known as an axon. That's the nerve fibre. And then the nerve fibre is surrounded by myelinating glial cells, and then it breaks up and joins. In this, to show it, I'm just joining it to one other neuron, but these will spread to all sorts of other neurons around, and they make this internet. I keep calling it the internet. These make the internet in your brain. Seeing that's the word that's coming out, I might as well say it. These make the internet in your brain. And you have a lot of neuron bodies and axons in the brain. But when it comes to the spine, and then it comes out down the nerves from the spine, I don't know how big a cell is, but I know they're really small. They're so small that you can't see them, or not even close to see them. You have to look under an electrical microscope or whatever they are to actually see a cell. But the spinal cord will have the body of the neurons, and then when it comes out through the nerves, it's just this part. So you have a cell so small, there's nowhere possible to see it. But you'll have a nerve fibre, say, from 2/3 of the way down the spine, travelling out all the way down the legs and to your big toes. So that cell is like 3 feet long, which is quite incredible. So within the brain and the spinal cord, it's both. It's the cell bodies, the axon, which is the cord, and the myelinating glial cells around it. When it comes out of the spine, it's just the axon and the myelinating glial cells traveling out to wherever they go. And the adrenals and the blue energies are to do with that. They're to do with the axon, the myelinating glial cells, which is a spiral sheath with a spiral of cranial C inside it. And it's the synergy of all three of those that relate to the adrenals and the blue energy circuit. And in the brain, it's this front bit and these two where that's coming down into the brain stem seems to relate to this a lot. Last time I also showed how it relates to the ventricles, or at least how the kidneys relate to the ventricles. The adrenals seem to relate directly to the nervous system. The kidneys more are like the lungs, the heart, the venous blood. The bladder, I don't know, this is just fluid, this is just water, to do with relaxation, also to do with stress. The penis, vagina and the urethra, the connection to the earth. And we've spent 5 webinars working through it, and today we will work with all of them, but I want to address the adrenals and the myelinating glial cells around that travel a lot around the axon and down the nerve pathways, and the fluid, the cranial sea that flows through this. And this is part of ascension. And to heal this, to heal the adrenals, to heal the nervous system, you have to start becoming aware of the intellect, because they are part of that. They are part of that. So, and the world is in adrenal overdrive at the minute, according to me anyway. From what I can see, the world is in adrenal overload. People are scared. People don't know if they're going to have a job. People don't know if they're going to be able to survive. People think, or are maybe waking up and finding out, well, the governments are run by the multinational companies, and the multinational companies want to vaccinate us. Some people are in that camp, thinking they're being, there's this thing going on. Other people are in another camp say, no, the governments are right, this is safe, and that and the other. So there's these 2 camps, but there's a lot of fear in both. Plus there's a war going on. Nobody really knows. There's so many strands to it. Who knows really what's happening there? And that could escalate and be very dangerous. But there's this feeling of going out of control. It's not like it was kind of 50 years ago, when you kind of had the feeling you knew what was going on. Now you start thinking about things, or you think this and that, and you're a conspiracy theorist, or you're not a conspiracy, and all these different things, theories happening. But it's bringing a fear into society. And I think we are traveling through the energies of the adrenals. We're traveling through the energies of the mind. To heal the adrenals, to heal the diseases like MS or any brain diseases or any deterioration of the, it's called the myelin sheath. I don't like that word. All of the myelinating glial cells, when they join together, it's called the myelin sheath. I don't like that word, and I don't like the description of it as a sheath that protects the nerves, because it totally takes out of the picture the fluids that are flowing through it and activating in it. And I didn't think I was going to talk about this, but I am going to talk about this, because it's another global imprint. It's another part of science that I think isn't telling the truth. And by it not telling the truth, people are losing a visual access to their energies. The word, the myelin sheath, just sounds like a membrane that's kind of dry, that's wrapped around the axon, and it says that it insulates the electrical charge so that it stays in the axon, and then when it's in the axon it can travel 50 times as fast. For me, and I'm probably again the only one in the world saying this other than people who look at my work, that is a total lie. In the same way as for me, I think the governments are lying. I think the multinational companies are lying. You can think, you know, just because I think in a certain way, you don't have to think in that way. But for me, that is also kind of pulling a veil over consciousness. The myelinating glial cells are made of a spiral membrane, then a spiral of salt water, and there's more salt water than there is membrane. Salt water is a perfect conductor of electricity. So to say that the myelinating glial cells are a sheath to keep the electricity in the axon, just from the anatomy of it, is madness. It's not true, because it can travel through the water. Now I think let's show you a picture. I'm not saying that it doesn't stop a lot of the electrical charges escaping in all directions. I'm not saying that. But I also don't want to perpetuate this lie that is just this insulator, because that stops us visualizing it as a live, organic structure that is conducting electricity. So I'm just going to show you a cross-section of it, if I can find it. I pulled out too many. So here's a cross-section of a myelinating glial cell. In the middle you have an axon, then you have a reservoir of cranial C, and you get the spiral of the membrane, or the cell, this very thin cell getting out and out and out till you have the nucleus there. This whole area that you can't see anything, that is cranial C, that is salt water. So obviously the charge from this can escape out into this, but it's not going to escape far, because the charge is going to spiral out. Can you see how that brings it to life? That your image of the myelin sheath has changed. You've now got an image of lots of little cells, spirals of fluid, spirals of a membrane that is part of a cell, and that the electricity, maybe it doesn't just fly off in all directions, but it can open up in spirals through that cell. And that gives you a whole different picture. And then you can start healing those cells, because you've got a picture that works. You've got a healing picture that is alive and works. So there's one that's breathing into it too, actually having a positive picture. And the name Myelin Sheath destroys it on all levels. Now you might call me a conspiracy theorist, but I think that name, along with the blood-brain barrier and different names and different ways they describe the brain, stops people from becoming aware of their brain and then being able to ascend. It's like you've got a block here because you're looking at it in funny ways. And the myelin sheath is one of those words I really don't like, because it's not a word, it's a picture and it's a diagram of how it should work, and it's wrong. It's not an insulator. The The myelinating glial cells are not insulators, they're transformers. The energy spirals out and back in within the cell, which is a very different thing to this like around a wire, just a piece of plastic, because they're describing it like a wire with a piece of plastic around it. Okay, let's see, we started going into this, so I will just show some more pictures. There's an energy to the axon in the middle, supposedly carrying the charge. There's an energy to the myelinating glial cell, this glial cell that's wrapping around it. There's an energy to the cranial sea in it. Here's a larger picture showing it lengthways. This is a lengthways section. The axon in the middle, the cranial sea, and the membranes. So if you look at that, and it has a certain quality, it has a certain energy because it's got the actual myelinating glial cell. If you look at it with just the cranial sea, notice how that's got a different energy. That is just the cranial sea within those spirals of cranial sea, lengthways within the myelinating glial cell. Now these cells are really long. They're 100 times as long as they're wide. So if they're about, I'm trying to get it on the screen, if they're about that wide, they're going to be this long. If they're a centimetre wide, they're going to be a metre long. So they've got a long thing for the energy to spiral in and spiral out. And I'll just show a picture of that. I tried to do it three-dimensional, and I had to do several and put them together. But there's one just showing kind of two electrical charges kind of spiraling out. And that's only turned about 3 times or 2.5 times. So the energy starts it and then spirals out and spirals back in. So it has this effect of the energy still traveling down, still being contained, but it's alive. If we connect to the axon, that's a particular energy. If we connect to the quality of the electricity or the energy of both the myelinating glial cell and the cranial sea spirals, that gives us the quality of the adrenals. If we just feel the cranial sea within it, the spiral of the cranial sea within it, without the myelinating glial cell, that connects us to the next circuit, which is the brain circuit, or the higher energies. It takes you out of the mind. It's still in the brain, but it takes you out of the intellect and takes you into the consciousness, connecting to the higher self, which feels really nice. And what we're dealing with to help heal the nervous system is that really quite awkward space of being aware of our own intellect. So let's just go through these pictures. So there we have one in the brain. Here we have the cell body. Here we have the axon and the myelinating glial cells. Don't need that. Don't need that. There we have the ventricles in the brain and the third ventricle coming down. This is more to do with the kidneys, relating to the whole blue energy circuit here, the kidneys, the adrenals, the bladder, the urethra, vagina and penis. Just kind of pictures to bring you into the awareness of what we're working with. Goes that way up, but to get it in, here we have the head. You've got cranial C in here, and then you've got all of the nerves coming out through the different areas. And at the bottom, about 2/3 of the way down the spine in an adult, it will stop, and it's just nerve fibers. And you get the bodies of the neuron in all of this, and then as it comes out until it gets to its destination, it's just the axons, the myelinating glial cells. There it is, coming out of the spine. See, you've got lots of the bodies of the neurons here, and then they're travelling off down the spine. Now, these probably are wrong by this stage. There is nothing to really say. But as these move into the nerve proper, all of the myelinating glial cells connect together. So there's nothing from outside can get to it. And within the brain and within the spinal cord, there's gaps. See, I had to learn all of this by myself from the internet that just started to prove that I was right, because I thought I'd gone nutty and that the scientists were either lying or just stupid. And because I've learned it, you've got to learn it. Sorry about that. I can't find the picture. That picture, oh, there it is. See, in the brain, there's a gap between the two myelinating glial cells there, because it's all cranial C, and they say the charge starts here. You know, this will be much longer with loads of them. The charge starts in there, and then between it then jumps to the next one, then the charge goes there, and that carries on like firing along the nerve. I'm not sure if that is true, because in the nerves, again, I don't think it's true. I think they're wrong. Either they're wrong or they're fibbers or something's going on, but it doesn't make sense to me. And I've given up listening to the government. I've given up listening to scientists. Scientists just seem to say what they're paid about. And so I'm just saying it as I see it. Where they actually join, this is the nerves. And in the nerves, all of the myelinating glial cells join together with thousands of tentacles joining each one. So you think about it, they say in the brain, the charge is between every myelinating glial cell, and they're tiny, tiny little cells, so there's millions of little charges going off. So what happens in the nerve? You're telling me just one charge before it comes out of the spine and then nothing for that whole length? I say rubbish. And I say rubbish for the spine in the brain as well. In the center, now these are longer, in the center of each of these, there is a reservoir of salt water cranial C, or sodium as the cranial C. It is the sodium that creates the charge in the nerves, the chemical reaction. The sodium goes into the axon, somehow creates an electrical charge. So in the very center of every myelinating glial cell, there's a reservoir of salt water. And you'd have to be a nutter to think that in just having salt water around it in the brain can create a charge, but having salt water in the middle of it in the nerve doesn't create a charge. And I think it's the same in the brain. And I think a charge goes off in the center of it. I think it just goes off in all of these spirals out through these spirals of the myelinating. And you look now, they're saying with electricity, you know, you watch the new kind of versions of electricity, they're finding, well, they think, well, actually it doesn't travel down, you know, you've just got a wire. The electricity doesn't travel down the wire, actually it's traveling around like a magnetic field. So for me, these myelinating glial cells, which are dry, myelin sheath that does nothing other than insulate, is this incredible, just beyond anything else other cell. They're just amazing things. They're not this rubbery sheath. They are this incredible biosphere that is creating us and working through us. So that's what we're doing. We're not doing myelin sheath, we're doing incredible God cells. And we're going to heal our adrenals. What chance have you got of getting better from Alzheimer's, MS, Lyme disease, all of these different things, and you want to heal your myelin sheath if you think it's a bit of rubbery insulation? You haven't got a hope in hell. But if you think it's this incredible spirals of energy and fluid and different things, then you can heal it. And they'd say, well, it breaks down and that stops the insulation. No. The outer sheath, you know, it can be 100 spirals coming in. All that needs to happen to blow that cell is that the outside layer breaks, and then that precious C that is produced for itself inside gets contaminated by the fluids around, especially in the nerves, because the fluids around it in the nerves are just full of all sorts of rubbish. It's meant to be protected. They will get in and they'll be full of lipids and different things, and they will stop that electrical flow within the myelinating glial cells. So it's not like this thing that slowly breaks down until it works. It's an alive organism. And by feeling the energies, feeling the qualities, feeling the expression of the intellect and the mind. Don't blame me, by the way, if you go mad after this and the psychiatrist tells you you're living in your id now and that is the end for you. You know, you've come here under your own volition, and it's obvious listening to me. I went off on my own direction quite a long time ago. So anyway, there's an image of what we will be working with. And we will be working with the energy points to get this going. We will be working with all of the organs, but we'll specifically be connecting to the adrenals and the charge, which can feel uncomfortable, and the charge in the nerves, which can feel uncomfortable. And maybe some people will feel it as the quality of the intellect. I'm not sure. It may just feel nice. But for me, to heal the adrenals, they don't just get better. You kind of have to set, and they're, be honest with me, they're full of terror. And definitely when my Kundalini went off, they were the last things that went. As the energy just came through, my adrenals were just going bananas, because they are somehow the connection to the mind and brain from the body, so that the energy was just pouring through them, and this absolute terror. I mean, there wasn't anything to be terrorized about other than I'd obviously lost my brain and my mind, but absolute terror. And I just learned, oh, well, I can't get rid of this terror. Let's just experience this terror. And it would come up in waves, and I just, okay, terror. and just let that go through. At a certain point, you process out all of the terror. It's like an ongoing panic attack for now 10 years. But if you allow whatever is there to process out, because there's this fear, I'm panicking, I've got to stop, I've got to relax to make this better. So you don't actually deal with the panic. I've got to get away from the terror so that I can relax and be all right, and that will heal my kidneys. I say no. Again, I'm probably the only one, probably a lot of people will tell me I'm wrong. Say, feel the terror. It's an energy. So if terror comes up, be with the terror, enjoy the terror, let it run through you until it burns out. Now, with the adrenals, that can go on for quite a long time. But after a while, when you are no longer a prisoner of it, because you become a prisoner, the terror comes up, no, no, back off, terror. And you calm yourself down, and it's still there going in the background, but you've got it, and it comes again. No, 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 I've got to relax. I'm going to meditate. Here I am, and this terror's still there. Be a motherfucker. Sorry, people who don't like me swearing. Be a Hell's Angel of the meditation world. Be a speed freak. So speed freaks, that's adrenaline, really. Be a speed freak of the meditation world. Just let that adrenaline. It's like being on a roller coaster. You know how you like being scared, like on a roller coaster or something exciting. Let that terror run through. You may go mad. I might be wrong, but I'm inviting you. It may not come up in the meditations, but it may come up later. And definitely, when you get to a level of clearing the adrenals and it clearing through the brain and connecting you, some lifetime, this lifetime or another, you are going to have to go through that. For your, presuming we're all moving forwards towards enlightenment, hopefully, you're going to go through that, because that is, for me, the last gate. That is the last gate. The adrenals releasing, the whole intellect lighting up, that quality, I've gone mad, I'm stuck in my id forever, is the last gate. And experiencing that opens that feeling of I'm stuck in my intellect, or my intellect's a terrible thing, or this is, I'll go mad if I stay here, opens to the higher energies. And that will give you a profoundly different experience of channeling. Profoundly different quality of channeling. So like the whole earth is stuck here. And luckily so, because if what happened to me happened to them, everyone would be nuts. But for the lucky few, you're going to start being able to awaken this and become nuts with me. So this will go. Now, I don't think it's going to happen to people in the same way as it happened to me. I think that's just how I worked. I just seemed to work fast, get terrorized to hell, and just always had the Kundalini, and one day it just woke up and never stopped, and I had to deal with whatever I had to deal with. Now, you know, from the feedback I get, everybody doesn't experience the Kundalini like I do. So other people will probably just get it much slower at a speed that relates to them, or maybe fast, but in a way that relates to yourself, that you can understand and be with.